Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely day. So today I would like to go over this interesting article that came out in CNN talking about a Tesla where full self-driving, supposedly according to the driver, triggered an 8-car crash. Now, it does say in this particular article that California Highway Patrol said in their December 7th report that it could not confirm if full self-driving was active at the time of the crash. That's not something that you can confirm because obviously once the car crashes, that feature is no longer going to be turned on. You do need to have access to the logs, and that does require contacting Tesla, so they can't say for sure. The driver says that it was traveling at about 55 miles an hour and shifted into the far left lane. And then the car braked abruptly, slowing the car to about 20 miles an hour. That led to a chain reaction that ultimately involved 8 vehicles crashing, all of which had been traveling, what you would expect in the left lane on the highway. Now, there's a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning when it comes to this problem. So when it comes to not even full self-driving, but just basic autopilot, there is often this issue called phantom braking, where the car will think something is in front of it, and then it will randomly stop, and it will apply the brakes full force. Now, when most people get into a car that drives itself, they tend to have their foot over the brake because they're afraid of the car doing something stupid. They think, I'm going to have to stop it. When in reality, if you've used the Tesla with autopilot before, you have some experience, you know that your foot should not be stuck on the brake. It should be stuck on the accelerator because the car, if anything, it brakes too often. What usually winds up happening is you're going 75 miles an hour on the highway and it sees a speck of dust it doesn't like and it just stops immediately, and you need to correct it by smashing the accelerator pedal, and that's something that's going to be more difficult to do if you're hovering the brakes. So typically people who tend to be new to the autopilot or any of this stuff, I understand what they're coming from, which is, oh my God, I'm afraid of this thing driving on its own. I'm going to have my foot hovering the brake, but it really should be hovering over the accelerator pedal because often what happens is the car will phantom brake. It's easy for me to drive, and it's also easy for me to stop paying attention and let the computer drive. However, it takes, in my opinion, more effort to constantly be ready, constantly be braced for the phantom braking. Like, what random moment is my car going to go from 55 to 20 in the left lane of the highway? To stay in that sense of heightened alert is something I fundamentally don't believe that our brain is meant to do. Jessa has a very good video on this where she talks about a concept called habituation. She has a PhD in molecular genetics, not neuropsychology, just to be clear, but she's considerably smarter than me, and it's very interesting listening to what she has to say. The whole idea here behind something like habituation is that your brain is going to stop listening to what it believes is nonsensical information. She gives you an example of when you sit down on the chair, your neurons tell you, oh wow, I have felt it. There is pressure. I have sat down on something. But after a while, it just ignores that because it is no longer relevant information. The same is true when you're looking into a microscope. Eventually it's like, oh wow, I have to get used to what's going on. And then eventually your brain just becomes used to and accustomed to that environment. And that your brain cannot simply turn habituation on or off. It's not something that you have the ability to do. The same way that you can't just tell your heart, turn off right now. Well, unless you eat enough checkers. You can't tell your brain to turn off habituation. It's just not something that's going to happen. So if you've been driving for 150 miles that day, you're probably not going to be in a great place if your car decides to just massively fuck with you and decide, I'm just going to go from 70 to 20 in a second, to be able to immediately correct it if your brain has gotten used to it. And that is part of the problem with the meme of just keep your hands on the wheel and just pay attention. While I am somebody that very much so believes in personal accountability and responsibility and believes that we have the ability to shape what's going on to some extent in our own lives, there is a limit when it comes to basic neuropsychology. And some of the comments where people will say, well, why weren't you paying attention to the road? What you're really getting in those comments is, well, neuropsychology doesn't apply to me because I'm special. And in reality, it applies to all of us. And you'll see just how much it applies to you when you get one of these piece of shit cars. And that's something that I think it really does require a bit more in-depth discussion, other than the sheer legal liability limitations we've seen that they have by saying, we flashed a message on the screen that said, pay attention to the road. We're not responsible for any stupid shit our system does. And I understand why Tesla does it, because there's no way that we're ever going to get from level 2 to level 5 unless we can really, get some experience with these devices on the road. There's no way we're ever going to start to make that leap unless there is some sort of legal liability shield against people doing stupid shit like getting a blowjob or playing a video game while their car drives itself. And I understand that in those types of edge cases, by all means, blame the idiot that turned on autopilot while they were doing that shit. But at the same time, we do have to take into account that there is something called habituation. Our brain does work in a certain way, and there's fundamentally no changing that. And if you think that you are above that, again, drive one of these meme cars. I think that our brain is very, very good at figuring out what is important information, what is not important information, what I need to focus on, and what I don't need to focus on. And if the device is good enough for enough period of the time that I don't have to focus on it, I genuinely don't believe your average person is just able to do that, to keep their brain on like that. I don't think your average person has the ability to say, okay, the car has been driving itself for 40 minutes, but I'm going to stay in the exact same heightened sense of alert. If anything, even more of a heightened sense of alert, because my car never phantom brakes when I am the one driving it. It's going to phantom brake when the stupid ass computer is the one driving it. Staying in an actually heightened sense of alert than you are when you're actually driving, waiting for that moment where you have to brace and switch over and immediately accelerate, I think that's way harder than actual driving. And I think the people in the comments of these that say things like, well, he should have been paying attention, he should have had his hands on the wheel, I think that's a really easy thing to say for you if you've never actually had your car have that experience where it just stops. Again, after driving for 30 to 40 minutes just fine, just randomly, freakishly decides to stop and just fuck with you. Now, what makes this kind of interesting, besides BlackBerry meowing in the background, is that something I went over last year is that Tesla replaced radar with nothing. And I said that they need cap functionality, and it's something that you should be aware of when taking delivery of your car, because several people bought this car when it actually had radar, and then they took radar away. Now, what I find interesting here is the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. BlackBerry, Jesus Christ. BlackBerry, come down here, girl. Stop meowing. Anyway, what I found interesting here is the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration is investigating reports of Teslas braking unexpectedly, and it looks like they are investigating this because they're getting a lot of complaints about the 3 and the Y, and they're not investigating it in the S and the X because Tesla did not remove radar from the S and the X. However, this report of... Good girl, BlackBerry. Good girl. Anyway, this report of this happening is on a Model S. Now, something to understand is a lot of people are blaming the phantom braking on the fact that Tesla removed radar recently and they are only using vision. However, one of their justifications, and whether or not this is true, whether or not anything Elon Musk says is true in general, but that's another conversation. But their justification for removing radar is that the radar was what was causing the phantom braking, because the radar would, bounce off something, or there would be something, it was kind of confusing having the different inputs. You'd have vision input and radar input, and combining these two is very difficult, so you'd wind up with phantom braking. So if we're able to use just vision, then we'll have less phantom braking. But the fact that this is happening on newer models that do not have radar, but is still happening on the old ones, is really interesting, and also probably an incredibly confusing problem for them to solve. And it also complicates things for the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. If they are investigating the 3 and the Y for phantom braking under the idea that not having radar makes them more likely to phantom brake, then again, that doesn't make sense, because the Model 3 had a lot of phantom braking. You could look it up on Tesla Motors Club, any Reddit, anywhere. The Model 3 and Y, prior to them removing radar, had a lot of phantom braking. If anything, people were happy once they got rid of radar because they thought, now there's going to be less phantom braking. So they're not investigating this on the X and the S because they didn't remove radar from it, yet that's what caused the 8-car pileup in this particular article, which is something I think is a serious oversight that probably should be looked into here. The idea that these are not going to crash just because they have radar, no. And again, obviously, one of the most important things to go over here, I think, is just this idea when it comes to full self-driving in general of, like, there's this idea, and I get it. All the comments are going to say this, well, he should have had his hands on the wheel. He should have been paying attention to the road. What do you think is easier? Do you think it's easier to drive your car? Or do you think it is easier to have your toddler drive the car and then take over if the toddler does something stupid? My first question for you would be, do you think it makes sense that somebody should be able to just be paying attention at all times like this, even if their car is doing all the driving for them? Do you think that it makes sense to expect them to be able to go from, my car has been doing everything for me for the last 40 minutes, but I might have to immediately smash into something because my car decided to surprise me and phantom brake or smash into somebody? Or do you think that that's unreasonable for the human brain. My second question is, what do you think the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration should be doing here regarding their investigation? Because again, right now, they are only opening their investigation, from my knowledge, into cars that do not have radar. However, again, the Model S and the X do have radar, and they still have phantom braking. And again, it is very important to understand here that one of the primary reasons that people were so excited that radar was going away is because of all the cases of phantom braking that they said were brought on by radar. So you've removed radar, but you still have phantom braking. And the old ones have phantom braking with radar, but they're not being investigated because they have radar. This is all such a ginormous cluster F. Anyway, I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I have experienced Tesla Autopilot before. I have experienced the phantom braking. And again, anytime I drive one of those vehicles, one of the ways that I would deal with autopilot is I would have my foot over the accelerator, expecting that when the car is about to do something stupid, it's not going to do something stupid in terms of phantom acceleration. It's going to do something stupid in terms of phantom braking. And once you have that expectation down pat, I think it is much easier to not cause an 8-car pileup that either maims or kills people on the highway as a result of your car being a meme. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. Also, one thing I really want to apologize here for, because it is genuinely inappropriate of me, is that you may notice that BlackBerry is cropped out of the shot. That wasn't intentional. That was poor camera work on my part. I moved the chair forward, but I did that so without moving the camera. And as a result, you can't see BlackBerry's beautiful face. And I am truly sorry for that. I promise I will fix it before I do my next video, or I will stop producing videos. Let me know what you think. See you next time.